Welcome to Speaking Cinema, series movie Jibber Jabber, a movie podcast coming to you live from the underground crime syndicate of a rundown Ukrainian school in Hollywood, California. Listen to us Jibber Jabber every single Monday. Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, SoundCloud,
Stitcher,
iTunes. That's where we're at.
We're everywhere.
Speaking Cinema, it's a podcast. We talk about a movie before and after seeing it. For a contextual conversation about the film in general, politics, love, philosophy,
Hate.
well,
Power.
I am your host, geography flunking crime kingpin, Mr. Jibber Jabber. With me today, as always, a truck driver who's just looking for love, Kevin.
That's me.
This week on the Jibber Jabber, Love and Hate Have No Translation, 2014's The Tribe. A pick for season 8 of the Jibber Jabber, a season of random picks that we picked.
Just doing ones we want to talk about. No theme. No nothing.
Starring a cast of unknown actors, more on that in a moment. Written and directed by Miroslav Shaposhiptilinsky.
A very Russian name. I believe it's Miro. Hold on. Let me try this. It is Miroslav Slaboshipsky.
I feel like I did as best as what could be
probably.
expected, but yeah.
Honest to God, I tried to find a YouTube video of somebody saying, and here's director, this guy.
And?
Not a one.
God damn it. We tried. People, if there's nothing else that you glean from this podcast, is we're fucking trying.
We do it with love.
Produced by Gemintia Film Production with support from the Ukraine State Film Agency. Distributed in the United States by Draft House Films.
Of Alamo Drafthouse fame.
If you're not familiar, a teenager enters a new school where he gets initiated into an organized crime ring run by the students and some teachers. When he falls in love with one of the women in the group, he begins to unravel the fragile hierarchy of the gang. The kicker to all of this, the school is for deaf and mute children, and the entirety of the film is in sign language. No subtitles, no voiceovers, no dubs, no music, no mercy.
No mercy.
So we got a
high concept here.
You gotta be using those critical thinking skills.
Mm-hmm.
The unknown cast is made up of actual deaf actors. The director had previously made a short film called quote-unquote Deafness, and has said in interviews that he has always been fascinated by the struggles and triumphs of the deaf. Despite his fascination, the director does not know sign language and had to have an interpreter on set to make sure the actors were sticking to their lines. This is like one of those things where the end of the story could be, and it spiraled out of control terribly.
Yep.
Let's find out. This film contains only 34 shots at 2 hours and 6 minutes long. That's an average shot length of 3.7 minutes. Most films have an average shot length of 3 seconds.
So this is...
But I feel like those montages really undercut...
it depends on...
Mm-hmm.
It's average.
The Tribe premiered at the 2014 Cannes Film Festival to rapturous praise from both audiences and critics. As of this recording, The Tribe is available on Blu-ray and DVD, and is available for digital HD purchase and rental on Amazon Prime. Not streaming anywhere. However, check your local listings. Who knows?
You never know. They add and delete things as contracts expire and are renewed.
Kev, have you heard of and have you seen this movie?
I did hear about it through various movie blogs and articles I read. Did not get a chance to see it, though it did play, I believe, at the Regent Theater, which is in UCLA. Never got a chance to go see it, though.
It definitely also played at the Cinefamily.
Oh, yes.
I have not seen it. That's how I heard of it, was on the Cinefamily's website. And also, I think, on film blogs as it was making its festival run. I picked this. Why? Because I saw it, and I saw it that the Cinefamily was going to play it, watched that trailer, was blown away by it. It was just like... the trailer holds nothing back, right?
Yeah.
It's like there's nudity in that trailer. There's you're like
good old red band European trailer,
right? And you're like this is the trailer. Like this is like just seeing the pieces of the movie. It was just like, what are we doing?
Yep.
And the idea that it's made in this way.
Yeah, when I heard there's a movie done completely in sign language, I was like, why hasn't that been done yet? You know, So,
And I think it's just because, as a culture, we just do not give deaf people the time of
you
day.
just don't think about it,
Yeah.
you know, as much as we should.
As much as we should. Saved it, Kev. Are you a fan of silent films? Can film images be a universal language across all countries and moviegoers?
I think so. And I am a fan of silent films. I think you can, with the right story, you can do a lot without any kind of, like, minimal music cues, minimal kind of invasive dialogue. Just tell a story that, in no matter what country it plays in, anybody can understand it. You know, and anybody can laugh at it, cry at it, feel emotion towards it. There was an interesting documentary, I believe it was, I can't think of the name right now, but one of the cinematographers they interviewed, he said if sound had been invented 5 years later than it was, he said, like, the filmic language of just visual storytelling would have, like, exponentially grown to a point where we almost wouldn't need sound. Which I think is an interesting idea.
I think it's an interesting idea, and I think it's real cute.
It's cute.
I think it's not true.
We'll never know, but
We will never know, but it's also a convenient thing to say. But it's like, you know, there are movies now that are made that have less cohesive storytelling than movies made in the '60s, right? Like, if you ever see Roman Holiday, that movie, if that movie was in color and had, you know, like, that movie tonally, pacing wise, is a modern movie. It's like it's timeless in that way of, like, it just has held up immaculately. It's just in black and white, and it has old people actors in it, right?
Yep.
But you look at contemporary movies at the time, you look at contemporary movies now, and it's like, you know, why is this movie just so poorly done? You know what I mean? I think that the collective knowledge of filmmaking is not just passed down generation evenly.
For sure. Yeah, I completely agree with that. But are there universal things that would have been born out of that anybody, no matter where they were watching a film, could understand it without any sound, without any language?
Well, there's an interesting argument to be made there, right? I like the idea of silent movies. Love me some Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Fun stuff over there.
Little Fritz Lang, you like Metropolis?
I have not seen Metropolis.
Oh, you should watch Metropolis.
We should add it to the list.
And, I mean, the King, Charlie Chaplin, his movies are great.
Yes.
Still funny to this day.
And that's the thing, is you look at those movies, right? And it's like the action from those movies, it, you know, was probably not even close to be attempted to be replicated until Jackie Chan.
Yep.
For better and for worse. Because, you know, no one's life's worth a movie. But the interesting thing, there's argument when sound was first invented that sound is a limiting, it's kind of going back to what you're saying, it's a limiting agent in terms of storytelling, because when you have a silent movie, you make the whole movie, you have the little cards that have the text.
Yeah.
And those cards, you just swap the cards out for every language, different language you want, and you send one movie around the world, and ostensibly it's the same thing, and localizing it is very simple.
Yeah.
When you get into sound, it's like, now you've made a English-speaking movie. Now you've made a Chinese-speaking movie. Now you've made da-da-da-da-da-da. And then localizing it becomes tougher, because you have to either sub it or dub it or whatever, and it's not the same thing. Whereas one could argue that in a silent era, if you just translated it and you translated it correctly, it is the same thing.
True.
So
but, like, certain jokes might not carry over
culturally.
Culturally.
I think that's true.
I mean, I'm not saying visually that's not going to also happen too,
Right.
but it's, you know, you can't just, there are certain, like, French phrases that they only make sense in French. If you translate in English, you know, there's something about, like, a weasel in France. I forget the name, but, like, if you know French, it's like that phrase makes perfect sense, but when you just translate it straight, it makes no sense.
Right, and there's a French New Wave movie. I want to say it's like La Ronde or whatever, but I don't know what it is.
Oh.
And a guy was eating sardines with his hands, which I guess was like outrageous in France at the time. And it's like, you know, in America that would not, because like, yeah, you eat sardines with your hands. I mean, I guess that's kind of gross, but like, you're not like a
your hands
monster.
get all salty.
Yeah, I mean, that's you're hurting you.
Yeah.
I'm okay. You know, but in France, they were like, culturally, this is like, you know, so whatever. So, I think that images can be a universal thing, and I think, but they're not, some things will always be lost in translation because cultures are different.
Exactly.
Are you a fan of juvenile delinquent movies? A genre goes all the way back past this, but, you know, I think perhaps
the
immortalized
defining one.
Rebel Without a Cause. I would also say The Wild One, or The Wild Ones, with Marlon Brando.
Oh yeah.
That's also another one up there.
Yep.
Which, by the way, the fashion in that movie.
Yeah. Juvenile delinquent movies, like we were talking about teen movies in the Hive and how much we like those and what they can say. When you look at that other side of teens committing crime, you can really explore what would drive somebody to be a rebel, rebel against the system that they've been brought up into. And I think that's just very potent storytelling everywhere you go. I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time is Brick, Rian Johnson's debut film. This is basically like a noir that takes place in high school.
That's a good movie.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and it's a brilliant film, but it's such a different take on these are teens practicing organized crime, but in this just very completely stylized setting that we've never seen before.
Yeah, I like it too, and that movie's great. I think, like, movies we've done on this thing, The Warriors, Akira. There's an interesting idea of, like, again, it goes back to this. You're not an adult, you're not a kid, you're immature, you're mature, and it's this idea that, like, where does that leave you? And yeah, you fuck off and mess up your life. Are you forced to bad circumstances? Even documentaries about this, like Dogtown and Z-Boys is an interesting one, right? Where it's like all these kids come from broken homes and they find something that is theirs and then they put their spin on it, and that's Yeah, I mean, juvenile delinquent movies. It's an evergreen genre. It's the equivalent of like the police procedural for TV, right? We're always gonna watch a movie about some kid, and I enjoy like different subcultures. Like even like a movie like this came out in like the early 2000s. Did you ever see Whip It?
Yeah. Whip It
with the BMX bikes and then
the roller. Aren't they roller?
Oh, sorry, I'm confusing. I'm confusing.
That's yeah.
Let me bend this back. There's Whip It, which is about the roller skates, and then there's Stick It.
Oh, Stick It's about the gymnast, right?
Yes.
I never saw it, but I heard it was interesting.
It's a fun movie. It's fun. It's not like...
It's got Jeff Bridges. I gotta go
It's got Jeff Bridges. It's a fun... It's a smart take on a juvenile delinquent rebound kind of story, right? Because she... Like, it's like they either let her go back to... Like you can either go to juvenile hall, the army, or you go back to your gymnast team, and she's like... Prison it is. Yep. You know what I mean? And I think, I just think it's a genre that you could get a lot out of. Like, why is someone angry? That's kind of an interesting question, right? Yep. You live in a first world country, but there's that suburban malaise that always permeates every generation, you know?
Have you seen trailers for this new movie, American Honey, that's coming out?
No, but I've heard that title.
Yeah, it's a film about like this ragtag group of teenagers that drive across the country and either live off the land and go crazy, or they commit certain crimes. So it looks interesting. Although it's got Shia LaBeouf is like the leader of this, and he is looking skeevy in this trailer.
Interesting.
Which I don't know if he's acting or not.
Interesting. Eating opossums and
most likely.
Interesting.
And lighting fireworks.
I think it was on Vice. I saw this like photo essay about like these people who like live in the woods and they're eating a possum, and I'm like, God, that's so fucking gross.
That's as low as it gets, eating a possum.
Any expectations for this viewing?
I'm anxious to see something bold and what I understand is a fairly young filmmaker doing something very intense and very interesting.
It's hard to even put into words like my expectation, because I think bold is really good. I just, based on this trailer, like, I don't even know what to think. You know what I mean? Like,
it's a can this premise sustain
that's
a 2 hour and 10 minute runtime? Because this is not a short movie. Usually a movie like this, where you get a certain, I don't want to call it a gimmick, but we'll call it a gimmick because I can't think of a better word. Mm-hmm. Something like Hardcore Henry, something like, I'll just use Hardcore Henry. They're usually pretty short. They're usually in the 80 to 100 minute range.
You want to get in, do the thing, and get out.
Dude, just blow all your bag of tricks, and then it's like you've had this experience.
Hardcore Henry seemed longer than 80 minutes. It felt longer.
It felt longer, but that's any issue with that movie. But this is a 2 hour and 10 minute film. Like, are we conditioned enough to even sustain that kind of experimentation for that long? We'll find out.
Let's find out right now.
Here we go.
Here we go. And we're back.
We are back.
Kev, how did you watch this movie? Kev.
Blu-ray from Netflix.
Blu-ray from the
Blu-ray.
library.
Very
Watch it on Blu-ray.
Good Blu-ray.
Did you watch any of the extra features?
I did not. Didn't have time.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
They had an interview with the main actress girl, and they had that.
I assume in sign language with subtitles.
You are correct.
All right.
And they had a short. They had commentary, which I did not have time for, and they had the short, which I was like, I started it, and I'm like, I just can't. After watching this movie, I just can't do anything anymore. Okay, so before we get into this, normally we don't do this anymore. We used to recap the movie, a movie we asked everyone to watch. So either they had watched it and already seen it, and then we recap it, or they don't want to watch it, are going to continue to listen to us, and we're recapping it anyways.
Yeah.
So don't do that anymore. But due to the nature of this movie, I want to give a quick synopsis of what I think happens, and then I want to see if this jives with what you think.
Okay. Excellent point.
Okay. There's a new kid in a school for deaf and blind, deaf and mute, recruited by hoodlums. He's not a junkie. They got high standards. You can't be a junkie when they get recruited. Becomes part of the gang, which they sell like weird trinkets on the train, and they
it's either trinkets or it's. Pardon me. Continue.
Yeah.
I'll give my interpretation.
And they do various hoodlum stealing and things like that. Their big money getting thing is they pimp two girls who are associated with the gang, two truckers. One kid, the guy who's like the pimp, dies when he gets run over. So then our main character dude becomes the pimp. He pays for sex with one of the girls, but then ends up falling for her, gets her pregnant. His reluctance to continue to pimp her gets him kicked out of the gang. She gets an abortion. He realizes that she's trying to leave, which has been a subplot that's been going on, going to Italy. He tries to stop her in that moment that he realizes it. He gets beaten up by the gang, and they leave him for dead. Then he murders his former gang associates in their beds and presumably leaves the school.
Cut to black.
Drive what you saw?
Pretty much my interpretation. I can't help but think the little baggies are some kind of drug, though, that they have. Not necessarily trinkets on a train.
Oh, because they're selling the things, but do you think that that's a separate
I think
thing?
that's a separate side business.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
Yeah. They have all these little baggies everywhere, and to me, that was some kind of drug ring that's going on.
I wouldn't be surprised.
But it's not a big subplot in the movie. But yeah, for the
Right.
most part, it's
Which
they
and
pimp
also
out
makes
these two girls to truck yards.
Mhm.
A little trucker lingo. Those are called lot lizards. If you ever wanted to know that, the prostitutes that patrol a truck yard.
I can't unknow it now.
Dude, your life is in two phases. Anyways. But yeah, that's generally. I think it's more. I don't know if they're choosing to go to Italy, but the heads of the gang, which I believe one of them is their shop teacher, if I'm not mistaken.
Shop teacher, yeah, or something in the school.
Yeah, he's a figure of authority who's kind of rounding up all these kids. I believe they're going to send them to Italy as a means to like expand their empire a little bit, and that's sort of that to me is what.
And one of those guys was a cop, right?
Yeah,
And then that's how he's getting them.
getting them passports.
Right. Which, by the way, that's the weakest. We'll get to this later, but that's the weakest scene in the movie is watching two girls struggle to fill out paperwork.
Yep, it's as exciting as it sounds.
Oh man, what a scene!
But yeah,
it was.
I mean obviously he falls for her, unknowingly gets her pregnant. He gives her money. She uses that money to get an abortion. I think he discovers that, learns that he was going to have a child, and she used this money that was supposed to better her life, and she killed his child with it. Runs into conflict with the gang when he won't pimp her out. He, eats her passport, basically, because they're restraining him, and he just grabs it in his mouth and he thrashes it like a dog. They leave him for dead. He comes back. He murders them.
But
roll credits.
with the abortion, I mean, here's why this movie is great, right? It's like with the abortion thing, what other reason is he giving her all this money? And two, there doesn't seem to be a scene where he is upset about the fact that she's got an abortion.
I don't know about that. Is it?
I also forgot.
Do you think he's just more upset that she's going to Italy? I think at some point.
Yeah, because he only gets upset. He just want. He goes up to talk to her, and she shows him the passport, and he's like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
You know, with sign language, and that's when he gets. That's when he gets upset. And he grabs the passport. The abortion thing. In fact, you could, other than the fact that he gives her a bunch of money that he finds, there's no implication from what we can tell as non sign language people that he even knows about it.
For sure. All right, I can kind of buy that.
Well, but the thing is, how do you know?
We don't really know.
Right. So before we get into this fully, two thoughts. Just I just want to put out there. One, overall hard to take notes because you can't look away. Because if you look away, you'll miss stuff, and there's no audio cues of any kind to help you.
This movie is like room tone, and then certain action sounds start to
A
finish.
lot of shuffling feet on gravel.
Yep.
A lot of like this noise
Yep.
of
They'll
people
kinda
like
make-
rubbing their hands
If
together.
they're really exacerbated, you'll kind of hear
Yeah.
something like that.
That one guy did it a lot.
Yeah.
That one guy in the gang who recruited him.
Yep.
Yeah.
But there are no audio cues as to until much later in the film, as we'll discuss, that really tell you what's happening. You got to be eyes focused all the time.
Opening shot. No, this is my second point. Of a bus stop. Asking for directions. In the background, the shell of a burnt out car. Says it all. That's the movie. It is a car on fire.
It is incredibly stark.
It is a white knuckle film for sure. You texted me after you had watched it because you watched it before I did. Hey, just so you know, like, this is not one you should watch with Emily. You're right. You were right. She did walk in for the in the scene where he's paying her for sex for the first time.
Okay.
So she did get to enjoy their
Coitus.
coitus.
Which is a very interesting scene because it starts very cold, of just like you're paying a hooker for sex and she's kind of just like, oh, just bend me over.
Just do it.
And then as it progresses, they get more impassioned, more just having that real aggressive, just, I love you sex, and then that's like a whole love story in just one scene.
Mm-hmm. And it goes from awkward to more awkward.
I mean, there's a little bit of this, you hear a little bit of that sound in there. It's
She said that when she was doing an interview in France, the interviewer asked her if she was really giving him a blowjob, and she's like, I didn't answer that question.
yeah,
But it's like,
it's a little perverted.
it is. But the way she said it, and it might have been because I had just watched this movie and my mind was fried. I'm like, wait, what are you implying? But I don't know if that was her intention or not.
Yeah.
So, Kev, you want to get into this or what?
Let's get into it.
Go ahead.
This is an extremely bold and interesting film.
You said that your expectation of this movie was bold. I hope it's bold.
It is
And
very bold.
it is bold. Did it sustain its experiment, its gimmick, its premise?
I think the experiment of doing sign language, I think absolutely holds for 2 hours and 10 minutes. I think there's another experiment that maybe doesn't quite hold.
Which is 34 shots.
34 shots.
Kev, I want to just tell you right now, I agree with point A, I agree with point B.
And here's why I don't think I think the 34 shots is one experiment too far. And here's why. There's not a lot of close-ups in this movie.
I believe none.
No, like, just shots of faces, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I think it creates an artificial distance of, we don't really get into these people's, who they are, as, like, we don't even see a close-up of, I read on Wikipedia his name's Sergey, he's our main character.
Uh-huh.
We don't really...
Which you would have no way of finding that out.
Yep.
Unless you...
don't really get a close-up of him. Don't really see anybody's face until maybe the 10 or 15 minute mark of like these characters, maybe even a little later. And I think there's a lot of emotion that you lose when you can't just look somebody in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
We can see sign language all we want, and we can interpret it, but we can only interpret it in the broadest sense. Like, we know these two people are fighting. We know these two people are having sex and falling in love. We know what's happening in the situation, but the real minutia of like what separates a good drama and really tells you about what's going on in a character's head, I think you lose that layer with so many wide shots, and then there's no editing that can kind of guide you along with the emotional beats of it.
Right, and there's no editing that can tighten up because there are literally no cuts except for the cuts between the two.
Yes.
The 34 scenes, right? There's 34, approximately, like 34 cuts in this movie. So, you're watching a girl fill out fucking paperwork, and this scene could have been 5 minutes.
Yep.
But now it's going into its 7th minute, and you're like, I just can't watch this anymore.
Yeah, you've locked yourself in a corner of you cannot shorten this scene. Because the important part of that scene is at the end when he has to go pick them up, but he doesn't even know what they've really done yet. At least that's how I interpreted it. He doesn't know that they're being shipped off to Italy. Mm-hmm. And it's, you can get this paperwork scene. That's not the meat of that scene. The meat is they are beginning the process of doing it. Sergei doesn't know about it.
Right.
And you really paint yourself in a corner when you film it that way, that we have to sit there and watch these girls do paperwork. And in a way that I feel doesn't really reflect any conflict that they're going through in that scene. Mm-hmm. And again, there's literally a barrier between us because the camera is outside. And there's a brick wall, window, and we're watching these girls through the window. So, while I do like this movie, and the story is very affecting, but to really get into that drama, to really make it soar, you need that little more human emotion into it.
I would argue that the sign language part of it totally works fine. And while there's an argument that could be made that, if you subtitled it, that would be also a very interesting experience as well. That's a separate thing. We'll get to that in a minute. So I think the no subtitle, no dub, no explanation, no nothing, sign language, I think totally works. And there's scenes when he's giving her the money for the prostitution scene, when he's paying her for sex. At first I thought that he was just giving her her cut of the money for the night.
Yeah.
And then later I was like, oh no, that's his money.
Yep. And
he's trying to fuck her. Okay. So it's like, I think there's a lot of revelatory moments that you have.
Yep.
Where it's like, when he first meets the first member of the gang, you're like, do they know each other? And then it's like, no, they don't know each other. He's checking him out, but because he's the new kid, they're trying to get him in the gang real quick so that they can keep their and not lose him to presumably a different gang or just whatever, right?
Just being a nerd who goes to school.
Yeah, that's my interpretation of that. Maybe they did know him. Who knows? So I think the 34 shot thing doesn't work, but just barely, right?
Yeah. It doesn't kill the movie.
It doesn't kill the movie at all. Yeah. It's still a good movie, and it's still an interesting experience. I think there's a couple of scenes that go too long, and I agree with you. I took that in my notes as well. It's like, everything's a medium shot. And there is an element of it that's cool because when these people are acting, they're acting with their whole body, right? Their sign language, face, body language, everything. And there's really well-composed shots, and what comes to mind is when they're in one of the kids' rooms with bunk beds, and they're all divvying up the bags full of whatever.
Yeah.
They're throwing it to each other, and then two kids get into a fight all of a sudden, and the guy's like, they break up the fight, and they smacks the kid, and, it's like, there's some good stuff in there.
There's that good, outdoor brawl, too, that happens, during the initiation.
I got my problems with that fucking outdoor
brawl.
Right. I got my problem. But it's an interesting scene, right? The way that it's all one big long shot. So I think that you're right, but then you could think of, how much more amazing would this movie have been if you use the power of editing to help tell the story too? Mm-hmm. So you see the sign language, and then you're using the editing to point you in directions and things, and people's reactions, and I don't know. Just
even holding on a shot of somebody who's maybe not even talking but being spoken to, and we can learn so much about them. I can think of a few scenes where you could have thrown that in there.
There's a scene. Going back. Again, we're gonna talk about this scene all night. But he pays for the sex. There's a scene where she pulls down her pants and kind of leans up against this wall, and you see him touch her butt. You know what I mean? In a way that's yee. Yeah. And it's with a little bit of editing, you could have really shown, brought us into that moment.
Yeah, make it a very kind of almost tender moment.
It's very voyeuristic, the whole movie.
Yes.
And I think, another way is we're saying all of this, and I would like to see the other movie with sign language that's done the other way. But I'm glad that this one exists because it's maybe that's a commentary on being deaf and how you're always out. Maybe it's the idea this is a voyeuristic movie and, we're always watching these people, but we're not on anyone's side. No one's a good character in this movie. Everyone's a bad guy. What's the main guy's name? Sergey rapes his prostitute girlfriend in the end, right? And it's like...
Right before he kills 4 people.
Well, right before...
What a charmer.
He rapes her, and then... You could tell that he doesn't understand that he's done that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also, he finishes inside of her, and it's like, did you learn nothing?
He learned nothing.
And then so it's like, he's not a good guy, right? For me, that's when, he's beating up a lot of people and he's pimping people, and I'm like, these are bad things. They get, but then he rapes a girl, and it's like, okay, so like, that's it. Like, that's like, you're not coming back from this. You know what I mean? And he doesn't really realize. Then the next day, he's trying to talk to her, and she shows him the passport, and then that's when he like has a total meltdown.
Yep. It's
There's a convenience to that scene where he steals her passport, runs away, runs into a room full of garbage, and all of a sudden the gang is there and grabs him.
Yeah. And again, you can't compress time in a filmic way when you have picked this stylistic choice.
Right.
And it's like when you have a poem and you have a rhyming scheme that's very rigid, and then you have to rhyme like hate with Maculate.
It doesn't really go.
It's you painting yourself in a corner that you just really don't need to.
Also, orange rhymes with syringe.
Does it?
Orange
syringe.
Syringe.
It's not a perfect rhyme.
Get the orange, and give me my syringe.
Well, there you go.
Inge.
Inge is the key there.
I think this movie makes an interesting comparison to the Neon Demon of all movies, a movie that we saw together.
Elaborate, because I didn't see any Neon Demon in this, but
go
on.
They're the same in that they're both art house, white knuckly movies.
For sure.
All right, very vague, very generally in a similar category.
Yeah. One
is foreign, one is not. They're not the same movie. One's much more of a straight horror movie. This one is not a horror movie, but horrific things happen in it.
Yes.
Right? Lots of very stark violence in this movie. But I would like to compare them in that I feel like, personally, the Neon Demon lacked action. By action, I don't mean gunfights. I mean moments of interest, a.k.a. stuff happening. And I think this movie has a lot of stuff happening, especially in the beginning and especially in the end. And there's just a couple of scenes where the movie drags, right? And we have to watch a girl and some guys eat sausages. And it's just fucking the salami scene. It's just like,
and the reveal in that scene is they get the Italy shirts, and that's where we get the idea of there's something else going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I also
just eating sausages though.
I would. Jesus Christ, there's so much. The guy fucking cutting up salami with a little tiny like pocket knife.
Yep.
I wonder if there's someone on the internet that has a synopsis of this movie, like if they know sign language.
That's well worth looking up. I'd happily take a look at that. Really get some of the details that you wouldn't get if you didn't know sign language.
Is there anything in this movie that just didn't work for you?
I wouldn't say nothing doesn't work. I think it held my attention for the full runtime. There was a moment where I was just like, it's not quite work.
I think the fact that the whole world... I mean, and again, I think there could be a justification for this, which is that they're all deaf and mute, so they don't hear anything. Because even when everyone they deal with, every character in this movie is a deaf mute.
Yeah.
Even like the cop, who we see talking to people, but when he is sign languaging, he's not making any noise. And perhaps this is to encapsulate the experience of being deaf, where even if someone's talking, you're not even hearing them.
Hear it.
And then whenever they attack people, because they attack a guy on a train and take his money, and they attack a guy outside of a grocery store and take his money and his groceries, there's never any noise. And I feel like...
Well, no.
No, when
they thwack him on the head, there's a good solid that.
There's that, but there's never like he's not crying out in pain. There's no, you know what I mean. So
I like the scene where the original pimp gets run over by a truck, and that guy starts running towards the truck, but he's not yelling like "Stop the truck! Stop the truck!" He's just running towards it, and then he hits the trailer. It's like that's not gonna get anybody's attention.
But that guy was the shop teacher, right?
Oh, it was?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
It was hard to tell. So, regardless, they're never gonna give, even if it was another trucker, no one ever talks, and I don't know if that is I want to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that because this is what it's like to be deaf, right, where you can't hear anyone.
Yeah.
It's just weird, and I guess maybe it'd be a bridge too far if people were making movements with their mouth but you couldn't.
Yeah.
But
because then you'd have to cut out room tone, you'd have to cut out any kind of outside sounds, engine noises.
So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't like the fact that there's no close-ups. I wish that even if they wanted to keep this 34 shot thing, that they would just have gotten some inserts and thrown them in there.
A little push in, like a subtle push into somebody's face. Just
right.
Give me a little more.
I would even take an edit. Give me an edit of someone just opening a door or
editing. There's so many editing moments that could really put this thing, give it some real emotional resonance.
And the last thing that just did not work for me was that fucking fight when they jump him into the gang looked fake as fuck.
All right.
You don't think it looked fake?
It didn't distract me.
It was so choreographed and they were going through it so quickly.
True.
I did not like that.
I don't know. It didn't stick out to me.
Okay, do you want to talk about the ending?
Let's talk about this ending. So
he murders everyone in their bed all the dorms are more or less the same. There's these little, like, you get like a little table thing that is like has a little it's like a little
nightstand.
Little nightstand. Perfect. And so no matter how the room is arranged, everyone gets a little nightstand. So he goes into the room he goes into two separate rooms
after he's been left for dead by these guys.
And he picks each guy's nightstand up and bludgeons them to death with it.
Just crushes their heads.
And no one wakes up. And then he walks out of the room, walks to the next room, does it again, walks out of that room, walks to the exit, leaves, credits. What did you make of this?
I mean, that is just some of the most brutal filmed violence you'll ever see.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense that this movie uses... This is going to sound funny, but this movie uses deafness really well as a means of conflict.
Yeah.
You know, the guy who gets crushed by the truck, he only does that because he can't hear the truck backing up. And it's like, you realize, if you were deaf, you would have to be 100% on your game in something like a truck yard, which has a lot of moving parts and a lot of things going on. And if you not paying attention for a second could get you killed. That's really interesting. This is also a really interesting scene, this ending, where you can kill these people this way and nobody's going to be none the wiser.
Of course they don't wake up because they don't hear anything.
They can't hear anything.
Oh my god, I just
figured that out.
I just put that together.
I'm
I'm living in a noise-filled world.
That's true. But yeah, that's this. It uses
also the sickening sound of skulls cracking made me forget that guy is deaf.
Yep. But yeah, it's like he can sneak in the middle of the night and crush these guys because they can't hear about it and they can't do anything. And then to a point where you almost feel bad for them because they're helpless. They're just sleeping, you know? They have no idea there's a threat coming their way or is standing right next to them and that their friend is dead.
Why do you think that he kills them?
I mean, they leave him for dead. They take away his woman. They
kick him out of the gang.
This gang kicked him out of the gang. This gang almost giving him nothing but grief. Besides,
and made him a violent person.
Made him a violent person who, as far as we know, he's not. He's just kind of a wiener kid.
Well, I think he starts off being a wiener kid. And you in the movie you see this because when they attack the guy at the grocery store, they're clearly making it like kick him, and he kicks him really gently.
Yeah.
And then later they're roughing up a kid, and he's doing it, but he's awkward, and the other guy is like really into it.
Yeah.
And then by the time the movie ends and he's embraced his the gang life. You know what I mean? It's like he's a wild animal, and they kick him out like he's still the guy that they met in the beginning, and it's like, no, dude, this guy's a fucking crazy dude.
Yeah, he bludgeons the shop teacher with a wooden hammer, and then just goes in and crushes these guys with their own nightstands. And you just feel you could never do that scene in any other movie because everybody would wake up and be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" and then could easily stop him. But it's just this crushing helplessness of. He is a wild animal. He's given up on everything, and these people can do nothing to save themselves right now.
Yep.
It's very... If that doesn't leave a hole in your heart, then I don't know what it does. But it left me shaken at the end.
There's also an element of this movie of, like, what's not there. in the beginning, there's a couple of scenes where they're in school, and then we never go back to that, right?
Yeah, it was the teachers kind of get. You see one class, and then it's like, who's watching these kids? Those
Right.
kids have class?
Right. There's no family in this movie. No one comes to visit them. They don't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like they're in juvenile hall. They're not, but it feels like that way. Or to our knowledge, they're not. And there's never any classes again. So it's just basically a bunch of kids living in a dormitory being fucking crazy.
Yep. Just with minimal supervision, you know. Yeah, it's an interesting world it portrays. It's just this kind of crumbling Eastern European aesthetic.
What do you think this movie's about? Like thematically?
I think it's just a youth movie about somebody who comes in as an innocent and then is influenced by people, maybe not necessarily people he likes, but it's the only people he knows, and how that can, just that pure insular influence that you gets no outside opinion about and can turn you into this nasty thing, can rob you of your humanity.
Yeah.
I think that to me is his arc.
I think so. It's about the downward spiral.
And is it a higher commentary of people aren't paying enough attention to these kind of kids, that they're all sectioned off into their own thing and like sectioned away from society?
Well, that's an interesting point, and I think they're using deafness to make it, but could you argue that this movie is about poor kids in Eastern Europe? It could be about minorities in America. It could be about whatever the problems are in Canada, right? This movie, if these people were just living in the ghetto or in a bad place or in a place full of corruption, right? In Russia, it's like they're just living in a corrupt area or something where crime is high. They didn't have to be deaf, right? I think the deafness is an interesting subculture to involve into this, but the story, I think, is universal, right? If you just live in a bad, quote-unquote, place.
Yeah, it's nature versus nurture.
Right.
He's obviously not a bad kid, but we have
we have no reason to believe that.
We have no reason to believe.
But he embraces this gang life,
for sure.
And it seems like he wants to.
There's no other influence to steer him away from it. You know, there's no guidance counselor at this place that we know of.
There's not. It is your assessment, your inkling, and then your assessment. It's a bold movie. It's fucking bold. And there's nothing like it. Also, we haven't talked about the abortion scene, which is that was almost that was. I mean, do you think the movie went too far with that?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I think it's a reality that we have to live with. Is that if you can't
this movie
afford
actually
it,
face it,
that this movie will make you face it. And this isn't the first movie with a graphic abortion scene either. Enter the Void has one, and 4 months, 3 weeks, 2 days. I think it's called. Film from Romania.
That's about
abortion. A girl getting an abortion.
So the plot, the what's going on here? She goes to get an abortion, and it's implied that you have to get a illegal abortion to do it. And basically, for anyone who doesn't want to hear this, 30 seconds forward, it's like they just basically seem like they just scrape out the inside of her, and that's how they do it. It's not. There's no pill. There's no. I'm going to use the word in quotation, natural way. It's just kind of like, it's
as clinical and as cold a process as you'll ever see.
And she's like sitting above a bathtub, and
she's got ropes on her feet, because normally you'd be in some kind of
stirrups.
And yeah, she just has ropes on her feet and then tied around her neck. And that's what's keeping her feet.
The back of her neck. It's not choking her.
Back of her neck, yeah.
Right, not choking her, but still. I mean, that scene gave me so much anxiety. I wrote down literally, this is too much. In the moment, I wrote down, this is too much for me.
Yeah, it's intensely emotional. And then to hear her cry at the end of it it's the first time, it's the most vocalization we've heard in this entire movie.
Right.
And it's just, after someone has made one of the hardest decisions of their life and just had themselves opened up and a life destroyed in them. It's like, for that to be our first kind of emotion that we can really connect to, because we recognize exactly what she's going through and can hear this girl who does not speak, cannot help herself, but just cry in agony. Jesus.
And again,
I'm getting misty just thinking about it.
And again, this is this actress's first movie that has full frontal nudity, simulated sex with multiple people, and an abortion and a rape. It's if she never works again, you can't say that she didn't go out there and just put it all out there.
I mean, it's acting to really be. People always joke, "Oh, acting, it's an easy job." You know, it is an emotionally draining job if you're doing it correctly, or depending on the story that you're doing, and to just nakedly put yourself out there,
Literally and figuratively, just emotionally, everything. You are putting it all on the table for this. It is. You cannot help but be just shaken by it. So we talked about, you know, some inserts and things like that in more of a traditional movie way. Do you think that there should be an option for subtitles in this movie?
No.
See,
I think it was constructed from top to bottom to always be a movie without subtitles. Like, it was never. A certain section of the population will be able to understand it, like, word for word. But to me, it was always this movie was always meant to be visual, like purely a visual story. And so I think subtitles, you're going to be spending so much time reading it that you're missing what Miroslav is doing.
I agree with you, and I think if they had the option for subtitles, no one would ever watch it without them. And I think that's unfortunate. I wish it was like a video game where you can play through once, beat it by watching it, and then unlock the bonus
then
mode.
You get the cheat codes.
Yeah, you have to unlock the bonus mode, and the bonus mode is the subtitles.
That'd be great, you know. But yeah, to me, I think his objective with this movie is to show that you can tell a story without traditional subtitles, traditional editing, a lot of traditional filmic means. But that begs the question that I've thought about is, does this movie work if it had all that? Let's say this was just a movie about teens in a troubled environment and all, you know, everything happens the same way, but they can talk, they can communicate. You know, you might substitute certain things because of the deafness is gone, but do you think this movie would still work?
Not in the same way, because there's a level of mystery that you've never experienced like this. So not in the same way, but it would work in the sense that this particular story is so dark and so interesting, and these kids are just on their own and abandoned and trying to, you know, they're part of this like drug syndicate, and you know, and there's like teenage prostitution. It's so dark that I think is intrinsically interesting.
Yep. Yeah, you know, Tom Petty always talks about you should be able to take a song and reduce it down to just like chords on an acoustic guitar, and it should still work. And I think the bones of this movie would still work as just a good kid gone bad story.
Indeed. Unfortunately, there's no way to remake this movie without completely alienating any buzz that you would get, because it's like, so you took something that was magical and crazy and you softening it. That's another thing about this movie, is that as an experiment, it is the most extreme movie in terms of just potentially alienating the audience, a bold vision, putting it out there. To change anything about it would be viewed as wussing out.
Yeah.
Right? To make it so that even if they spoke, you know what I mean? That would be like, oh, you're cheating. But like, they're speaking Polish. It's like, cheating. You know what I mean? The original was sign language. It's so hardcore, this movie. In every conceivable way.
Absolutely.
Which is interesting for a movie that has swaths of 5 minutes where no one does anything or says anything interesting. Someone eats a sausage. Someone fills out a form. Someone puts on makeup. But see, that scene was interesting, though, when they're in the back of the truck and they're putting all their sex working gear on. And you're like,
that's
what?
When you realize that's what these girls are here for.
Do you feel any sympathy for Sergei? In the end?
I do, in that he had no other option, it seemed. Like, this school is just systematically built to just turn these kids into just animals. There's just nobody seems to be guiding them.
I feel bad for the situation in that sense, but I do feel like he, you know, not everyone in the school is in this gang. You know, he could have chosen not to do it. It's a hard choice, though, right? Because then you go down into being the other instead of the
Yeah.
powerful. But the rape scene is just like, okay, so he is officially a bad guy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He doesn't feel any remorse for any of this.
And that's kind of the scene where I feel you really lose sympathy for him, but maybe this movie's not even asking for it.
That's an interesting point too. That's an interesting point too.
Yeah, I don't think it's trying to say that he's some righteous person and doing the right thing. It's he has gone full into this life.
Right, he's full predator.
Yep.
Any nitpicks for this movie?
I have kind of an odd nitpick.
I wonder if we have the same one. Go ahead.
It's odd to me. Sergei is supposed to be kind of this wiener kid, kind of shy. You know, doesn't really fit in. He's in like porn star shape. The kid's got 6-pack abs. He's got bulging arms. He is like chiseled from marble, and that to me just stuck out. Like, did they tell him he's going to be naked for large portions of this movie, and then he hit the gym?
I think that's what happened.
Do Ukrainian kids, they just breed them way better over there?
I think
to me that really stood out. Like, he should be lanky, kind of pasty, very. You know, I'm not saying the kid needs to look sick, but I mean, he's
not ripped.
He's got a bod, man.
Yeah, I think they're like, hey, we're gonna see you naked like for minutes at a time, and he's like, cool. And he put the kale in the shake thing, and he turned on the blender. My nitpick is the cliche that we've talked about on this podcast before, where a teacher is caught off guard, and everyone neatly packs up right when the bell rings.
Yep.
Which in this case is a blinking light, which is very interesting, but no one and I've never been to class. I've been caught off guard. You know, I've seen people get caught off guard, but there is always someone who is like, cool, it's gonna put away my little thing of pens here, and I'm gonna put my backpack on my back, and even if I'm still taking notes, I'm just gonna fold up this notebook, put the backpack on, and get the fuck out of here.
Yep. And guess what? That kid was me.
That kid was. I mean, we're all that kid at some
everybody.
point. Sometimes you're into it and you forget. You're like, oh shit! But or sometimes you look over and you're like, why is Rachel? Oh, what? Bell
Yeah.
rings. But not that I didn't have any bells in my school. It was just time.
Yep.
Cool stuff. Any cool stuff? For deaf people, texting and smartphones must rock.
It must make life easy.
The school lights a bell. That's cool. Last thing, when that kid got run over, that's when you knew that this movie was. You're like, I wonder what
This isn't just some observational story.
Yeah.
Of like, look at how deaf people function in normal society.
Right.
It's like, that's a big plot moment.
Right, and it's the first time you realize that, like, because they spent a lot of time introducing you to this bizarre world, and that moment is, and it's probably the first act break, that moment's like, oh no, this is gonna get worse.
Yep.
Like, as bad as crazy as all the things that you're discovering, the beating up of children, the exploitation of women, the whatever, we haven't started yet.
Mm-hmm.
This is the start.
Yep.
And you're like, uh-oh.
Right, yeah, that moment. I remember I had to watch this movie in two chunks, and I stopped right before that moment. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna pick this up, next day. And then that moment kicks off my second chunk start. I'm like, oh shit, I stopped. It's a good thing I stopped here, or else I would have never been able to stop. I mean, it's absolutely powerful, and yeah, it announces that we haven't even started yet. You know?
This movie, in big picture, do you like this movie? Does it work?
I do like this movie. It does work. I think it could have been really great, really seminal, if we get some more emotional moments of some close-ups, some editing to help tell the story. Not in an intrusive way. I'm not saying Michael Bay this thing and just cut the shit out of it.
That's what I'm going to say in a minute.
But, like, give us a little more, because we can only think about it in the broadest terms.
You can't deny it's a fucking bold movie, and it does what it wants to do, and it doesn't give a fuck about you, and it's just like, here it is, bitches. You figure it out.
Yep.
In a way that is utterly confident, and not immature, either. Even though what I said was immature. And I'm glad I saw it, and I like this movie as a piece of art, and I think it does what it sets out to do. I think we've highlighted our issues with it. It's not super watchable because I think some of these scenes do get really long. It's not a movie that you could ever just turn on. It demands your full attention. And I do think that is cool for a movie. Like, it's like, no, like, you're either watching this shit or get the fuck out.
Yep.
I want this dude to direct the new Power Rangers movie.
All right.
Why not?
I mean, a story of youth in need of direction. Why not? Give it to him.
Sequel pitch, fan theories. Got any?
I think
I'll take a remake idea if you got it. I don't care.
Remaking it seems to miss the whole objective of that this can be shown in any country and people would know what's going on for the most part. So, remaking it, what's that going to do? I think you get an interesting look at if we can see the girl go off to Italy, and if she's like even more on her own, trying to live in a world that is not catered to her. And then maybe
it would be interesting to see it, her story, and perhaps the question of her story becomes, do you get out while you can, or do you stay in because it's what you know?
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a really powerful push-pull.
Yeah, I think that
I think Sergei, his arc is complete. We don't need to see him again.
Yeah, I think that's what if they do make the sequel, that's what it should be. My pitch is an American remake with Anna Kendrick and Miles Teller. That's it for us. This episode written by Kev, music by Jeff Russell. I am your host. Kev is your host. You are the audience. Thanks for listening. We are signing off. Get it?